The opening match of the Rugby Championship competition is nearly here. South Africa travelling to Australia to take on the Wallabies in what promises to be a very entertaining game. And in this preview, we'll be looking through at the lineups that have been announced, the key players, the previous fixtures that took place in July for these two sides, and then a prediction at the end of who we think will win this contest. But it is an early morning start for the viewers from South Africa. 6:30 AM is when this game is scheduled to kick off. Knowing Australia though, it's normally 15 minutes later, so that would take you to 6:45 AM for the start time of this contest. That is on Saturday morning, whereas for us here in New Zealand, it is going to be a 6:30 PM kickoff, or in Australia, it is 4:30 PM on Saturday. It's going to be very intriguing to see who walks away with the victory here. Australia have a brilliant record up against South Africa in Australia, but at the end of the day, you can never underestimate the Springboks side because they have got some fantastic players, including a little bit of X Factor in that number 10 jersey. But looking through, first of all, at the Australian starting lineup, it will be Isaac Kailea in the front row alongside Matt Faisler and Alan Alalatoa. Now, Alalatoa, one of the more experienced players that Australia have got for this contest. We have seen Joe Schmidt mix it up in terms of the experience as well as the youngsters when it comes to his lineups throughout the July internationals, and this one is no different. In the locking duo, it will be Nick Frost at number 4, with number 5 being Lukan Salakaia-Loro. Loose forward trio, Rob Bellatini will be starting at 6. He has kind of juggled between that 6 and 8 jersey. We do see someone like a Charlie Cale and now Harry Wilson more taking to that number 8 jersey, whereas no one's really cemented themselves as that 6. So Rob Bellatini, perfect spot to put him as he brings a lot for this Wallabies 4-pack. Number 7, the tackling machine, Carlo Tazzano. Now, I believe for a lot of South Africans, this will possibly be their first time seeing this man play. He is an absolute workhorse, makes a huge amount of tackles throughout Super Rugby Pacific. So like I said in the lineups video, I'm very curious to see if that does transfer over to international level, or whether the Springbok 4-pack can try and shut him down for his debut. Number 8, it is Harry Wilson returning from an injury. He is going head-to-head with Elric Lowe here, which in some regards is a bit of a dream head-to-head that I feel like not many people have thought about. Harry Wilson doing brilliantly for the Reds in Super Rugby Pacific. Elric Lowe doing brilliantly for the Bulls throughout the URC. There were times where it seemed like maybe those two wouldn't cross paths, but the Rugby Championship, that common ground that we do then get to see those two take each other on. In the backline for the Australians, it will be Jake Gordon and Noel Alessio as the 19 combo. Filippo Dangunu out on the left wing, did receive a red card up against the Georgians, but is available to play in this game. Hunter Paisami and Len Ikitau as the 12 and 13, with Andrew Callaway out on the right wing and number 15 being the in-form Tom Wright. But now looking through at the Springboks starting lineup, it was announced a couple days earlier than the Australians. As always, South Africa getting that first jump. As always, South Africa very early with their announcement. They are confident in what they choose as well. They are confident. Rassie is always confident with the players he selects. And like I mentioned earlier on, bit of an X Factor player in that number 10 jersey for them and at this match. But in that number 1 jersey, it is going to be Oxnashe Bongi Mbanambi at 2 and number 3, Franz Malaharba. First scrum of the day, I think, is going to tell us a lot of information about how this match is going to go. South Africa having that same front 3 for a very long time now, with the exception of that game up against the Portuguese. This is not just what we have seen, but also, I believe, what we will be seeing throughout a majority of this Rugby Championship. In the locking duo, it is Eben Etzebeth alongside RG Snyman. He is in there rather than Mostert, who has got himself the injury. Number 6, Sia Khaleesi, the captain. Number 7, Peter Steftatoi. He returns from his own injury that he had recently. And then number 8, like I mentioned, it is Elric Lowe. They did have Quagga Smith in that 8 jersey up against the Irish, but in this game, he will instead be making his way off the bench. Number 9, Kobus Reinach, with number 10 being Sasha Feinberg Ngome Zulu. In just the short time that we've seen of that man at international level, he has got a very bright future. Came off the bench in the games up against Ireland, including coming off the bench only 2 minutes into a contest after Villy LaRue to get knocked out by James Lowe. He played brilliantly throughout that second test match up against Ireland. You wouldn't have thought he had as little experience as he does, and he also offers the kicking tee, which is massive for the South Africans in this competition. Kutli Arunsa out on the left wing. He has got a brilliant try-scoring ability and one of the best strike rates going around in international rugby at this current time. Damien Dialende and Jesse Krill, phenomenal midfield combo. Number 14, Cheslin Colby, and then number 15, it is Vili LaRue for his first minutes since that knockout in the second test. But both sides looking strong. Australia, the more inexperienced side. In terms of the age of these two teams, I think there's about a 3-year advantage on average for South Africa, around that 30 mark, which is surprising when you see that someone like a Feinberg Ngome Zulu is in the starting side. But then for the Australians, they've got a lot of young talent that is coming up through the ranks. So it's going to be very entertaining to see how these two sides do match up face to face. But looking through at key players, for the Australians, I believe Harry Wilson is going to be extremely crucial, as well as the locking pairing for the Australians in Nick Frost and Lukan Salakaia-Lotto. If they cannot get those lineouts right, I think South Africa have the potential of running away with this game. Also because I believe the Springboks will have the advantage when it comes to scrum time. So if the lineout's functioning for Australia, that is a brilliant thing to have. And then if they're doing the other little things right, they could build some momentum throughout this matchup. Andrew Callaway, I also think, will be one of the key players in that back line. He is marking up with Kutli Arunsa. It is not an easy job to do, but I believe if you were looking through at this Australian side and you said one player has to try, Andrew Callaway would be the man that you do put forward. For the South Africans, key players, I've said them too many times, so I'm not going to go with Sasha this time, but instead I'm going to go with the big man, bringing the physicality in the locking duo, that is Eben Etzebeth. Up against the Irish, this I don't think is too critical to say. We didn't see a huge amount of Eben Etzebeth. Second test match, we did see a little bit more, mainly because he was going on and off the field with his cut that he did receive throughout that second test. But in terms of the first match, we didn't really get to see Etzebeth that much. South Africa didn't really need to rely on Eben Etzebeth, whereas I think in this game, they may have to. Alan Alalatoa, I don't think that man's forgotten his little rivalry with Eben Etzebeth that we saw developing throughout a recent Rugby Championship. Those two got quite fired up. And Makazole Mapimpi was involved in that, sadly not involved in this game, but perhaps the second match. We could see Mapimpi rejuvenate that rivalry that little bit more. In terms of the other players in the South African side to watch out for, I think Jesse Krill at 13 has been looking tremendous throughout 2024, as well as their Rugby World Cup. You know you're doing something right when you're stopping Lukhanyo from getting into the Springbok side, and that is exactly what Jesse Krill has been able to do. Peter Steph Toy as well. You can't look past that man up against Carlo Tazano on debut. If Peter Steph Toy plays his cards right, could find himself being the much busier 7 throughout this Rugby Championship contest. But now looking through at what happened recently for these two sides. First of all, for the Australians, they did have a home series in July. They did go head-to-head with the Welsh twice, then also played the Georgians in their final contest throughout July. In the first game up against Wales, they did win it 25 points to 16. Their second game, they won it 36 points to 28. They had to work extremely hard to get that victory. And then their game up against Georgia, winning it 40 points to 29. So no real runaway games for Australia. Quite a few back and forth kind of contests, but every single game that they played throughout July, they did end up getting themselves the victory. In the end for South Africa, their first game was actually in June. It was up against the Welsh. They did win it 41 points to 13. Then the massive series up against the Irish, one that people are still talking about, even though it was over a month ago that it did start up. First match, South Africa won 27 points to 20. Second match, the Irish winning with their last minute drop kick, 25 points to 24. And then that third game for the South Africans up against the Portuguese, winning at 64 points to 21. So overall, I would say both of these sides are in good form heading into this matchup. The record in Australia is in the Wallabies' favour, but the Springboks, like I've mentioned, you cannot underestimate what they can bring to this contest. But Brisbane, also a location that South Africa don't have their best record at, but all things could change here for the first round of the Rugby Championship. But now we are at the stage of a prediction. in this game. I just feel like even though Australia have got the history in their favour, the South African side, I do think, have got a very good shot of winning this game. I just wonder if Australia have made too many mistakes throughout their first few games up against Wales and Georgia. And those type of mistakes are the ones that South Africa will fully make them pay for. I think it's going to be close though. So I am going to say South Africa to win this game at 27 points to 20. I think it's going to be relatively up there in terms of scoreline. Maybe a bonus point on offer for the side that do lose. But either way, I hope it is a fantastic game. We are going to be doing the live commentary on the channel, so be sure to check that out. And like I mentioned earlier on, it is an early morning start for you guys in South Africa, 6:30 AM on Saturday morning when this game has taken place. But nonetheless, do let me know who you think will win this game in the comments down below, as well as your score prediction for this contest. But thank you all very much for tuning in. If you did enjoy, be sure to leave a like and subscribe, and I will see you all for the next one.